pleasure to be here in Taiwan and to have this speech this morning, to share with you some thoughts about this very important issue, how we will design our energy system in the future. And Dr. Ye already gave a very impressive introduction into that. I want to add some experiences from Germany to what was already said, going a little bit more in detail. What we did in Germany and what our conclusions are regarding the energy development here. So my agenda for the presentation is that I want to give a brief introduction in where we are with our energy systems, where are the challenges. The main part is I want to go in and give an overview on the energy policy in Germany, what we developed over the last years, where we are, targets and strategies, and how a sustainable energy system could really look like. And we're also working on smart cities, so it's on the one hand side to work on the national level, but also a lot of activities has to be established on local level, and therefore smart cities is an important pillar for a sustainable energy system. Then I will talk a little bit about the energy status and policy in Taiwan, compare a little bit Germany and Taiwan, and come to conclusions and recommendations. So where are we with our energy system? We have growing risks on our energy system and on energy system supply. On the one hand side, we have the fact of climate change. Everybody knows that in the room, I'm sure about that. But we have to say it again and again, because at the moment we are not on the track to limit the increase of the global temperature to 2 Celsius degrees, which would be necessary to avoid existential consequences for countries and societies. So we have to do more to reduce energy consumption, and especially to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Secondly, security of supply and price stability is a big issue. Resources of fossil and nuclear fuels are limited, for sure, we know that. Peak oil is likely happening this decade, and import dependency for politically unstable regions are there. So there is this dependency, and we do not have a solution for that. If Taiwan is dependent on 98% energy imports, it's a huge dependency, and nobody knows if it will work also in the coming decades as it works over the last years, because at the moment it's not any problem to import enough energy. But will this be the case in 5, in 10, in 20 years? And last but not least, also this was already mentioned, nuclear disasters happen. I think this is a real experience we have, we faced, unfortunately for the people in Japan, in Russia, but also the people in US, which also faced several decades ago a nuclear disaster. So the frequency of accidents can be reduced, but no technology is known where accidents can be avoided by 100%. So there is a final risk which we have to take if we decide to go for nuclear power. And each country has to take the decision if this risk is really acceptable for the country. So huge challenges and more or less no solutions yet. This is the fact. Only some few insights and in some publications over the last months. How is the world dealing with the energy challenge? On the one hand side here, last week Russia threatens Europe with higher energy prices due to the Ukraine crisis. So in Germany, or sorry, in Europe, 30% of the gas is coming from Russia. We are now facing the problem that at least the price is increased. We will see if there also will be a problem in supply. It was published also in June, the world has 53 years of oil left. So you could say, well, 53 years, it's a long time. You could also say it's a very short time. Because if you know the effect of peak oil, there is, from the physical point of view, the aspect that you can use the oil out of the ground until the peak, and then the possibility to use that the oil is decreasing. And therefore, we are here. So there are theories, there are people discussing that issue, and there are some uncertainties about that. But the risk that we are already at that point, and in future we will have declining oil, fossil fuels, and oil available, is very, very high. And so at least we have to talk about the risk. At the moment, nobody knows exactly where we are. But what we know is we are in the risk that this will happen in the near future. Another news was last week, China finds shale gas challenging Haas 2020 output target. So shale gas is a big issue in the US, and a lot of people said, well, this is now the solution. The US did it, Russia and China will do it, and Europe will do it. But finally, if people and if countries are going into that issue, they are realizing it's not likely that is happening in other countries as well. And another issue, the IEA, International Energy Agency, published this study in 2012 showing that, in all countries of the world, without United States, which are dealing with shale gas, but India, China, European Union, imports are increasing in oil, imports will increasing in gas. So the dependency on energy imports is the same all over the world. Japan is already here, and Taiwan is in the same situation than Japan. It is in 2010 already close to 100%, and it will be into 2035 as well. So only a few slides from the International Energy Agency from this year. Over the past decade, 4/5 of investments in European power generation went to renewables, 60% just to wind and solar. So there is something going on. Dr. Yi already mentioned that. This investment won't happen with current market rules. Wholesale power prices are 20% below cost recovery levels. Another aspect, so more and more countries worldwide are looking into LNG. Also Taiwan and Japan is using LNG, but it was said over $700 billion invested in LNG infrastructure helps to globalize gas market. That's a good point of view, at least for these countries. But the high cost of transporting gas dampens importers' hopes for much cheaper gas. Another issue here. The IEA calculated how much money will be necessary and has to be invested in the power sector between 2014 and 2035. $7,000 billion will be invested in transmission and distribution, but also the same amount of money has to be invested in renewables and perhaps nuclear. Fossil fuel is only a small part of that. And last but not least here on that slide, states hold many of these cards. So ownership of worldwide power generation capacity and oil and gas reserves here in the power plants, more or less half of the power plants are owned by state-owned companies. Only about the other half, other 50% are by private utilities. And if you look on oil and gas reserves, a higher share is covered by state-owned. Why do I say that? What you see here is renewables and the development towards renewables are already happening all over the world, but you also see it's not happening by themselves. We need a strong policy pushing that forward. What is necessary to do that is we need a free market. A market in the energy sector is necessary also there. Policy is necessary. And here the question is who is investing and what is expected. Also here policy plays an important role. And therefore it's important to discuss the technology. It's important to discuss values and potential and resources. But finally it's a question of policy. It's our decision in which direction we want to go. The learnings from that first slides. The energy system of our countries, and this is the same for Taiwan than for Japan or Germany or US, we are facing serious challenges which are growing faster So the challenges are growing. We are facing a highly uncertain future. For example, it's not possible to predict energy prices. And we must change significantly our energy system. And our countries are partly hampered by energy monopolies. So policy leadership is necessary. It's a question of energy policy to deal with that issue. German experience, I will talk about this German experience, will present now in the coming slides. The experience will be presented according to the transformation of the energy system, the design of the sustainable energy system, and achievement and challenges and barriers. Nobody knows the future in energy. I don't know it, and I would assume also other experts don't know it, but we know how the risks can be reduced. This is the topic of my speech, to say, well, we don't exactly what will happen, but we have it in our hands to change the world and to provide a system which has lower risk than we are facing at the moment. I looked into the internet, and I know that China is really a very historical, a wise society, and I looked for some sayings, and I find two which fits very well from my point of view. Keep the general goal inside while tackling daily tasks. Also, this should be taken into account for the energy sector, and practice what you preach. Perhaps this can help to understand this issue a little bit. So energy policy of Germany, you know, Germany in the middle of Europe, between Austria, Switzerland, France, Belgium. This is Freiburg and the Black Forest where I'm coming from. So where we are. Germany is part of European Union, so also our energy policy is dependent on the European Union policy. European Union decided several years ago that they want to, for the year 2020, they want to reduce greenhouse gas by 20%, increase energy efficiency by 20%, and the share of renewables shall be increased to 20%. So this is the average for all European countries, members of the European Union. Germany decided to reduce greenhouse gas by 40% by 2020, energy efficiency by 20%, and since we are coming at least to at that time from a lower level, 18% in renewables in general and 35% in renewables for electricity. But what I want to focus on is here on the long run. Germany also set here concrete targets for the year 2050. Our goal is to reduce greenhouse gas by 80 to 95% by 2050, increase energy efficiency by 50%, the share of renewables shall be increased to 60%, and renewables for electricity by 80%. This is a huge number, and it's very obvious. The energy system must be transformed fundamentally. You cannot replace only some generators. You have to change the whole system. And how this can work, I will show you in the coming slides. But where we are at the moment, this is our primary energy demand in Germany 2013. You see here mineral oil 33%, natural gas 22%, hard coal and lignite 12% and 11%, nuclear 7% on primary energy, renewables today or last year 11.8%. So if we want to increase from 11 to 60%, this is a huge task where we have to work to. And if you look here more in detail on the distribution of renewable energies which are used today, most of them are coming from biomass. Biomass solid and biogas 7% here, biofuels 1%, waste and landfill gas 0.7%, and then solar thermal. And photovoltaics is 0.7%, heat pumps and wind power 1.3% of the overall primary energy demand, and this sums up to 11.8%. So we are still at the beginning with increasing the share of renewables. But what does this now mean? The German government said several years ago, now if we have these huge challenges to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions to that amount, how can we do that? And they asked 3 institutes in Germany to do a study on how the energy system could look like in 2050 and how it can be achieved to reduce the greenhouse gas by 80 to 95%. And so they elaborated a study, and this was the basis for a decision of the government in 2010. So the German government agreed in 2010 on the so-called energy concept 2050. And this is the concept. In general, it's very simple. So we have 14,000 petajoule, which we use on energy every year, or at least in 2008. And what we want to do and what we have to do is to increase efficiency by 50%. This means reduction of primary energy demand by 50%. So efficiency increase is a key pillar for a sustainable energy system. Reducing by 50% and then at the same time increasing renewables, and then we will come to the situation, at least this is the goal of the government, of 60% renewables and 40% remaining on fossil fuels. At that time, in 2010, when it was decided to run nuclear power until 2040. After Fukushima, it was decided to fade out nuclear power much faster, and now it will be fade out in 2022. But you see, it doesn't matter on the long run. The whole concept is not really affected by the nuclear power issue. The nuclear power issue is only a question of the near future, and we have